Can everyone see? Give
Yep.
me a thumbs up, Sheila, because I can see you. Okay, great. Awesome. So everyone, thank you for joining us today. Um, Myself, Saara Greene, and Doe and Doris and Sheila are presenting together our process around Cradleboard teachings, which we're going to go into more to sort of share with you about that process. But first, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. And I just want you to join me in expressing our gratitude and appreciation to those whose territories we reside on, and to honor the Indigenous peoples who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. It's important to me to understand the long-standing history that has brought us to reside on this land, and to seek to understand our place within that history. Colonialism is a current and ongoing process, and we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. I greet you all today from where I sit in my home in Toronto, the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on this land. We also want to acknowledge all the Indigenous mothers whom we consulted with in the development of this work to date, and this includes mothers from Quebec, Ontario, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia. And I think there was also one person from Alberta. So why are we here today? So many of you will know that there's been exciting shifts in the ways that women living with HIV think about and experience pregnancy and motherhood, including the decrease in vertical HIV transmission. And it's also equally important to understand the unique context in which Indigenous women experience pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. We believe that the experiences of Indigenous women living with HIV during pregnancy, birth, and motherhood must be understood within the context of colonization that have resulted in systemic and institutionalized racism. This includes the residential school system, the 60s scoop, and the overrepresentation of Indigenous children within the child welfare system. Indigenous mothers with HIV also confront HIV-related stigma and discrimination within health and social care settings. Sorry, these images are getting in my way. Here we go. The need to attend to the unique and specific experiences and needs of Indigenous families affected by HIV was articulated as far back as 2004 in the position statement on Aboriginal women, children, and families that recommended developing best practice guidelines for pregnant Indigenous women. 10 years later, this recommendation has yet to be realized, actually more than 10 years later. 15 years later. There is still an urgent need for increased attention to the particular perinatal needs and experiences of Indigenous mothers living with HIV, and Indigenous voices need to be at the center of any discussion regarding the development of a response to historically and culturally grounded perinatal and parenting health and social service delivery. It is critical that any approach to developing a framework for supporting Indigenous mothers living with HIV in ways that work elevate stories of strength, resilience, and resistance to the impacts of colonization and HIV stigma. In response, we are using this time today to honor Cradleboard stories and teachings with and for Indigenous mothers.
It's to me, right, Saara?
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to invite everyone in this circle, although we are virtual. I'm inviting you to listen to my words. I'm inviting you right now to breathe in through your nose, deep into your diaphragm. It should push out, and breathe out with your mouth. Breathe in again deeply through your nose, into your diaphragm, out with your mouth. As you continue to listen to my voice and continue to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. This time when you breathe in, I want you to breathe right through your thighs, through your calves, through your feet, through the floor and into the earth where you are sitting. And breathe out with your mouth. This time when you breathe in, and your air touches the earth, I want you to thank the ancestors of the territory that you are on. These ancestors have been there for thousands and thousands of years, and think of how every plant and every animal that was harvested was thanked. There was a reciprocity going on. Their energy is in the earth under you. I thank them all for allowing this land to stay as sustainable as they've made it, so that we can all be here. Lem Lem, thank you to those ancestors. Continue to breathe as you think about those ancestors that have walked with you. We all come from somewhere different, but we've all walked with our ancestors. They have never left us. They've always been there. And I thank those ancestors. I invite all of the ancestors that are connected now through our breaths to support us in this work that we're going to enter into right now. Support us to come up with solutions so that our Indigenous mothers can remember, so their blood memory can be activated into the life-giving knowledge that they each carry. Help each one of us who are working towards that end. Grandmothers and grandfathers, Kolchutin, thank you, Lem Lem. Thank you for being here. Watch over us as we do this work. Thank you for being present and supporting us. Watch over our brothers and sisters who are struggling in violence and addictions and the results of colonization. Help them to remember who they are and bring them back to the circle. All my relations.
Rich.
Thank you, Sheila.
Yeah.
Oh, cannot see my screen. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we got here today, to this development of what we're going to be calling from this point forward, Stories from the Cradleboard, Supporting Indigenous Mothers in Ways That Work. Some years ago, there was a toolkit that was created called the Supporting Mothers in Ways That Work toolkit that has been used across the country and actually even in the US and in other parts of the world. And it was developed through the mothering study to support more effective and appropriate and less stigmatizing ways of supporting mothers living with HIV throughout pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. It was felt that while it's an excellent document and a toolkit that's been used widely, that it didn't actually speak to the unique experiences of Indigenous mothers. It wasn't grounded in Indigenous history, culture, or knowledge. And so a few of us came together to apply for some funding to start developing a toolkit that was actually directed specifically to Indigenous mothers living with HIV. So it wasn't actually a research study. It was resting on research that had already been done. But it was a different way of bringing together the experiences of stories of the mothers that many of us have worked with together, along with Indigenous teachings and storytelling to be integrated into the toolkit. And this included many consultations with mothers across the country. So we're integrating information obtained from several other studies that have already been done and that have included the leadership of Indigenous mothers living with HIV, community members, frontline workers, and researchers, all that have suggested the need to develop a toolkit that is, again, grounded in Indigenous history, culture, and knowledge. The development of the toolkit has been further directed by Indigenous mothers living with HIV across Canada through many consultations conducted in Toronto, Regina, Montreal, and Vancouver. We're hoping that at the end of the day, the Stories from the Cradleboard toolkit will be used by clinicians, social workers, women's shelters, rape crisis centers, and mothers themselves in order to provide appropriate and culturally relevant care to Indigenous mothers. And for Indigenous mothers to be able to use this toolkit in any way that they want when seeking their own information or sharing information with peers, family, and other service providers.
So we did a number of community-based consultations, and again, it wasn't a research project that we were doing. We were going to ask women what they would want to see in a toolkit that was meant for Indigenous women, and we were talking to Indigenous women. So the basic frameworks for these community-based consultations is that we wanted to have elders involved in opening. We would have a circle of introductions. We would talk about the past research, and then we would have a discussion, a very fluid discussion among the women, what they would want to see and how they needed different kinds of supports and things that were missing, and Indigenous kinds of supports that were relevant to them. And then we talked about design and then wish lists. And then we finished the day with a talking circle, just asking for feedback on how the day went. And so they were very rich days and discussions. So I don't know, can I touch that? You can forward the slide. So in Ontario, we had 6 participants that came and shared. In Saskatchewan, we had 8, which included an Alberta participant. And in Quebec, we had 6, and that was in Montreal, and British Columbia had 12 people. So we had 33 women that came forward to participate in our search for information on how to make this an Indigenous toolkit that would be relevant and useful for them. So some of the, and there was a lot of information that was shared. So not everything is on these 2 slides coming up because there was just too much, but these are just some highlights of things that were very important that were mentioned more than once at different consultations. It's important to have a support group of peers or people around you. And for most of them, it was about peers, people who were also living with HIV, who understood their experiences and helped them navigate social services and health services. And so that peer piece was really important. And too many times Indigenous women were told what to do with their bodies in pregnancy and health. And that's across the country, but really harshly in Saskatchewan. Very paternalistic over there. And so I think that needs to be paid attention to. Doctors sometimes have sterilized women under sedation, and then they would tell them later. Like that's something that's really concerning. And there's still too much stigma in our communities. That was across the board. And different provinces had different ways that stigma manifested. In some, it was just, in general community, and in other places it included family, but in some provinces it was very, like, nobody talks about HIV. And so we really need to address stigma and reducing stigma around HIV still. And then the idea that it takes a village to raise a child. Yeah, always, we need community, need different kinds of supports. It's not always just around HIV. Addictions, often an issue, so harm reduction supports, parenting. A lot of, Indigenous peoples, because of intergenerational trauma, might not have received parenting themselves that was in the healthiest kind of way. And so just having parenting support groups, or like how to do this well. And then there's the other concerns, right? So wanting to know certain rights, so legal rights, medical rights. These are important things that were in the last toolkit and they wanted them continued in through there. They need to know these things. And then the holistic piece about wanting to support the mother in every possible way, not just in medical, not just in legal, but looking at the whole person and the whole family. And then and in that, it follows through with wanting continuity of care. So women talked about going to the social services here, going for support over here, going to the doctor, talking to the nurse, and having to repeat the story every time. And so it's just this idea that support workers in different fields can actually be connected in the support. And then just recognizing that intergenerational trauma from residential schools and other colonial practices are real and do still impact our daily lives. And then the women wanted a place to tell the story, their own stories, like little pieces of their stories in the document. They wanted to see themselves in it. So on the next slide, women wanted to know what the traditional teachings were. And this was across the board in all locations that we went. I believe it was in BC, they wanted to create a fantasy birth plan, like what is the best experience that they can have in their wish list. And so we were gonna try and create a template for that. What are Samoon Lodge teachings? What are the Tikanagan teachings, umbilical cord teachings, women's bundle teachings, teepee, drumming. And then they talked a lot about what are our traditional roles in our families as women. And so in different cultures, right? Like, and how can we represent that in the toolkit? And then things like medicine walks and preparations. How can we go and collect our own medicines and things that would be useful for our health, and, you know, just nice teas that we can make that are good for sleeping or whatever, right? And then people, there was a couple places where they were like, we don't want pregnancy to be bad news. Like, we want people to celebrate it with us. And so how do we create that for women who are experiencing a lot of stigma? Like, so in this toolkit, to create that, well, life, you know, this is a new life. This is new possibilities. This should be celebrated. And so they definitely wanted something in there around that tone. So there was two kinds of things, right? They wanted social support and reduction of stigma within all that, and all of that comes with it. And then they wanted traditional really infused in there. And so there was this how to indigenize our practices and how to help non-Indigenous support services and support people learn these things in a way that they're not being paternalistic, but they're actually can be supportive or even just aware, you know, like, especially around things like umbilical cord teachings where, you know, they can't, you know, it's not medical waste for them to take away. Like, they need to keep that so that the woman can do what they need to do after the birthing. And so, yeah, they wanted to see that we can incorporate those kinds of things, or tell the support workers that there are these kinds of possibilities and that they need to search this knowledge out. So it's about creating community connections.
So, whoops. So in doing this work, as we're forging ahead, we are committed to grounding our work in an Indigenous reproductive and maternal justice framework. We thought that we had to go beyond this idea of a toolkit and the idea of a step-by-step process to the provision of culturally responsive care, and rather focus on the idea of including traditional teachings and experiences associated with Indigenous motherhood. And that has become the guiding light for the work that we're doing. Again, as Doe was just saying, this includes but is not limited to teachings about the Tikanagan and how the child is integrated into the family as soon as they are born. We wanted to talk about the moss bag and reasons why it is a moss bag and the meaning and stories behind that. Mama Bedouin, swing, singing to the baby as you sing, and many, many more. And this is what brought us here for today's purpose, to create a space for mothers to talk about motherhood. And to get us started, I'm going to invite Doris, who's been a huge part of this process, to start telling us stories about motherhood.
Wait a minute. Ani bojo. Em kwenda gezet ndishne kas. Wa wash kesh dote. Dote. Nishnabe kwenda. We kwem kung donjaba. Hello everyone. My name is Doris. I am an Indigenous woman living with HIV, but that's another story. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I am a great-grandmother. And these are a few pictures that I wanted to share with you of my, well, they're not all my offspring, but kind of, I guess. My son and my daughter are in this this picture, and they're in the center. That's my daughter there. That's on the in the black and white in the center. That was her. She's now 42 years old, and that's her in a Tikanagan. And right beside her is my son, and he's my eldest. And I kept him in a Tikanagan as well. And so they're kind of central in this picture here. So in my maternal kind of experience as a mother, these tools were introduced to me from my husband's, my late husband's family, and where they used Tikanagans all the time. And they also used the Memebezewin, the swing. Was a traditional kind of swing, and there were teachings around these tools that were used, and there was a purpose why these tools were used. And I'm really happy that my great-grandchildren are still being kept in these Tikanagans when they're born. And so surrounding my son and my daughter are primarily from my daughter's side, all her grandchildren, and hence my great-grandchildren. And I really like that one picture up there where the cursor is right now. You could see the cursor with the two little ones there looking out. Those are two of my granddaughters. And so all of them, all my grandchildren and all my great-grandchildren are still using Tikanagans. Their parents are using Tikanagans, and they even have little toys for little girls when they're young. You could see my granddaughter there holding her little babies, and there's three colors I just noticed of the babies there that she has. And so quite often little girls were given little dolls like that, or a little small little baby Tikanagan with a doll in it. And they were taught how to put the baby in the Tikanagan. And you could get really good. I got really good after I learned how to use a Tikanagan. I could do it with one hand while I'm doing something else. And so I really liked that my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren are still being put in these Tikanagans. They sleep really well when they're wrapped up in this. And in Ojibwe they call them a takabedalswin, which means like a tying up kind of tool. And babies are put in those takabidaos when for a reason, because they're just starting their earth journey. This is what I learned. They're just they're still spirit, and they're still connected to spirit, but they're also still connected to the womb of their mother. So the Tikanagan, the Takabidawswin actually emulates that womb. And that's why the babies are kept in those when they're newborn like that, and they sleep really well, and it's very comforting for them. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about this. There is a lot more in terms of the teachings I've gathered over the years about Tikanagan, the Takabidawswin, which is the inner part of the Tikanagan. The Tikanagan is the outer part. If you look on the left side of your view, you could see my great grandson. He's leaning up against a wall in his Tikanagan. That's the outer piece that's got the wood on it, and you could lean the baby up um, against the wall. So they're fully integrated into the everyday life of the family. They're integrated in it. And somebody just asked, how long do the babies stay in them? As long as they want. So you can, when they're small like this, when they're newborns, they're in there, and they're usually fully wrapped in the moss bag. That's another term that people use for it in the Takabidawswin or moss bag. And but as they get older, like if that little boy that's leaned up against the wall there, if once he gets older, like maybe around 4 months, they untie the parts, a little bit of the top of the Takabidawswin, and his arms are free, and he's able to play and observe. And but that's another part of the teaching too, like how little babies are, like they come into this world, and their first sensory that they really hone is their power of observation. And that's why it's important that these Tikanagans were used to integrate babies into everyday activities of the family. They weren't relegated to a room by themselves in a crib where they could see these slats from the crib. They were integrated into the full family life, and I was very lucky to have this experience and learn about the Tikanagan, and also to learn about the Memebzewen, the swing. And there's a teaching around that as well. So there's lots of teachings that I learned along the way. So that's my story. I've got 2 other great grandchildren that are coming. One in July, and another one, I think both of them are coming in July. So I'm going to have 7 great grandchildren by the summertime, and all of them are still using their Tikanagans, and sometimes these are passed down too. So that little boy that's leaning up against the wall in that black and white picture, they still have his Tikanagan, and he is now almost 6 years old. So they hang on to these, and then they're passed down to like when he has children, those children will go in the same Tikanagan. And my daughter is very good with embroidery. She did all the embroidery on all the Tikanagans except for my son and my daughter. So they do that embroidery as well, and there's a story with that too. Why that Takabidawswin is decorated in the way it is decorated. So that's as much as I'm going to tell you. I'm just very honored and privileged, and lucky to have been raised and taught about these teachings. Even though through this project that we're moving forward with, I am going to collect more of those kinds of teachings from elders, more elders that are going to nuance the little I know because I think the elders know a lot more than me. Even though some people might think, you're up at that age, you're a great grandmother. I don't really see myself as an elder yet, but I am going to go visit some elders and have some conversations about these the teachings. I do know what the teachings are, but I'm not going to share them at this time. Miigwech.
I'm just going to invite
Oh,
Sheila now.
okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Why? So my name is Sheila Nyman, and I am Sylph Métis from the Lower Similkameen in Lower British Columbia. I am a member of the Lower Similkameen Indian Band, and as you noticed, I do identify myself as Sylph, Okanagan, and Métis, even though I am a member of a band. I am proud of my Métis ancestry as well. My spirit name given me after my 6th fast is Stand Strong Like a Rock Bear Woman. And I hold that name close to my heart as well. That name and the fasting came after a very long journey with my life and zigzagging around. I was blessed to have been around my family until I was 9. And then I and my 5 siblings were taken in what is known now as the 60 scoop. So from 9 years old on, I was not around my family anymore. They separated us all up, and until I broke away in 1969 when I was 15, I did not get to connect with my family. Through an experience when I was finding my healing journey that I had around it in a circle of women with a smudge lit, a memory came to me. My great grandmother, that is her in the center of this picture here. Her name is Julia Surprise. She's Colville, Okanagan. Colville is in what is known as the US today, but back in those days, there was no border. She was known as the medicine healer of the whole area. She was also the baby deliverer. She would ride horseback. You can actually see those hills behind her in this picture. And she would ride her horseback over the hills from what is known as Kermias or Olalla to a place called Oliver now. She would ride her horse to deliver babies. And the elder that I was able to talk to was Auntie Doll, and she's on the left of this picture and on the right. Auntie Doll sadly passed away last year, just after she turned 102. I sought her out after the memory that came to me in that circle of women. It was actually a group called Indian Homemakers. And when all of these memories and knowledge came to me, I went back to our family land. I went and found Auntie Doll, and started. I asked the questions first to see what was this that I knew, and it was facts about our family and about my great grandmother. And so since about 1993, I have remained connected and learned from Auntie Doll. So I was able to talk with Auntie Doll, and she told me all of what she could remember from her mother, my great grandmother, Julia, and baby delivering. So I'll save that little piece for a little bit later. In this picture on the right is Auntie Doll holding my cousin Reggie. And that is actually where our family land was, where that picture is taken. The baby up in the corner in the Cradleboard is Trish Manuel. She's an elder as well from the Okanagan. She's from Upper Nicola is what it's called. And she was a second elder knowledge keeper that I interviewed. She's also a language speaker and teacher. Currently, today, she's still with us, and she provided that picture. And when I interviewed with her, I found out that we had cradle boards and we also had the swings. And the reason I knew about them was talking with Doris as we planned this project. We're sharing stories and knowledge, Doe and Saara, and you know, I'm finding out, well, that's in my territory too, and that's in my territory too. So that's from the east to the far west. And the closest, one of the closest people to me is Navajo and Seminole, and they too have swings and cradle boards and moss bags. And I just wanted to say that because you know, amazing how far back a cradle boards and the way we cared for our babies, and we're all so far apart, yet we had these very similar traditional ways to raise our babies, to look after our babies, to nurture our babies. Even though I did not get to learn as a small child all of the teachings after I was 9, I did think back when I had my babies. I had my first one just after I turned 16, and I would do things like I made things similar to a cradle board just because of convenience. I didn't even know what it was I was making. I actually made a swing. I had to weed a garden, and my child was crawling around, starting to crawl. So my first child. So what I did was I put him in a swing type thing. I made it. I created it so that he could be in that swing. He could still see me, and I would weed the garden, and he wouldn't be crawling all over into dangerous things. I also used that and quite instinctively sang to him as I rocked him. So my point in saying this is, although many of us, because of colonization, because of the disruption of Indian residential school and the 60s scoop, many of us have not been able to learn from our families the traditions that were carried on for so long before contact. But when and if we can trust our inner knowing, we all carry memory within our blood. It's in our cell memory. It's in our blood memory. And that was the experience that I had in that circle of women when they lit the smudge and they passed the eagle feather. It was a rush of blood memory, and all it took was the lighting of that smudge and a circle of women. And for whatever reason, that the memory came flooding into me, and we all have it. So I just encourage everyone, and everyone who's listening right now, when you do speak to anybody else, that we have these memories, and the more we practice, even as we're showing you what we know about cradle boards and some of the teachings, every time you learn it, your own memories will come forward. You will remember. You will remember what your grandmothers and great-grandmothers and great-great-grandmothers knew. As a part of my journey, I started with doing fasting. And on my first fast, I came on my moon time. My elder up there on the first night, so I had to come down the mountain. And she told me, she said, you know, we go and we fast. And many of us think we're going to have a vision. We're all waiting for this big vision of a big warrior on a big white steed coming and giving us some messages. Visions come in many different ways. And you, my girl, you just had the moon time vision. You had the vision and the gift of the knowledge of Grandmother Moon. So there was 5 other women on that fast who still stayed up the mountain. I was blessed with having the experience of my moon time power being harnessed and channeled by my elder to support the women who were fasting. The power of myself on my moon and the connection with Grandmother Moon so powerful at that time. And the elder who was there, the knowledge keeper directing it, I seen amazing things happen. And had I not been there, I probably would listen to these stories and think, wow, that's a pretty cool story. But I was there and I experienced it. So this power of Grandmother Moon and meeting that power that I have as a woman on my moon time, and the being shown how to open that conduit. Grandmother Moon guides women's bodies. Grandmother Moon guides the tides of the earth, the water of the earth. Women's bodies are mostly water. We know that. Science knows that the moon guides the tides. The moon, Grandmother Moon, guides the birthing. Most babies in the animal world and in the natural world, as long as women are not taking pills, most babies will be born on a new or a full moon. Most women will have their cycle, they will have their bleeding time on a full moon or a new moon. It is at that time that the conduit between us and Grandmother Moon is open. There is a full channel. The channel's wide open. And in the times before contact, before it got pushed away, we knew that women would go to what is known as moon lodges. They would have a lodge on the outside of the where the clans would be staying, and outside of the village. They would have isolation tents where women could go and be on their own by themselves. That was not, as the Europeans thought, to isolate or to shame or to shut women away. It was to provide a time for that woman to do nothing but focus on her power and that connection with Grandmother Moon. Because if she filled with that power, cleansed and rejuvenated, then that power was used for the whole village. The combined power of all of the women together on their moon time in the Moon Lodge would be combined into centering on prayer. The women could think about, where is the next herds? We need food. Where are they? All of the women in that Moon Lodge would focus on that. And some of them would come out and they would know where to guide the hunters to the next herds, where the herds were to feast the village. Women, we all know, we get this thing, oh, she's PMSing, she's on her rag time, she's all of these things. And we know that women can be irritable at that time. And you think about what irritable does. Well, rah, 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 irritable makes people back away. Our ancestors knew, I'm on my moon time. It is time for me now to go and be in isolation, to be in that Moon Lodge, to be with my sisters. They knew that. They didn't have to go to that place where they were irritable and pushing people away, because her instincts are saying, go be alone, go connect with Grandmother Moon. The channel is open, the conduit is open, connect now. That is the power that we have forgotten. That is the time we have forgotten to go and take that time. But Grandmother Moon, at that time, is giving us all of the power that we need to heal ourselves and to heal our families and our communities. We are giving life. We are the life givers. There is nothing in creation more powerful than that. They have not been able to duplicate that power of bringing life. Not life as we know it, not like these beautiful babies you see in these images, in these beautiful cradle boards. The teachings of the moon time are vast, and as part of my introduction, I did not mention to you that I am a Moon Lodge keeper now. I've been a Moon Lodge keeper. I keep Moon Lodge at medicine wheels, at sun dances, and women who come to those ceremonies are invited to come to the lodge that we set up. Women get to have an experience of being in a lodge. At that time, women are asked, don't cook, You don't need to cook. You don't need to wash. You don't need to clean. You don't need to do anything. We are going to look after you. So women are looked after so that all of their power can be spent centering in on prayer. I'm happy to answer any more questions at any time about moon time, because I've been a Moon Lodge keeper since about 1994 and been part of building them and creating them and keeping them. And I have seen the most amazing miracles, if you want to call them that, happen. I have watched women sun dancers come on their moon time when they're wanting there to be there sun dancing, and they end up on their moon and they're so angry, yet they are having the most powerful ceremony that can happen. On a woman's moon time, there needs to be no object, no smudge bowl, no eagle feather. Not because she's too powerful or she's going to hurt these medicine objects. That is the colonization's idea what was happening. Women don't need the smudge or the eagle feather or the ceremony, because we are in a ceremony. We are in the first ceremony. It's the first ceremony that ever happened. We need nothing to have that ceremony. We have that ceremony because we are gifted with these female bodies that give life, or they have the potential to give life. There's no ceremony more powerful than that one. And one of the most powerful teachings that you'll hear across all Turtle Island is do not mix up the ceremonies. Do not mix up the ceremonies. We do not invite Catholic priests to come and do communion in the middle of a Sundance. That would never happen. That would be mixing the ceremony. Those are separate ceremonies and they have to happen separately. And it's the same as women on their moon. They do not need to be in any other ceremony because they're in a very powerful ceremony in and of itself. Auntie Doll was able to talk to me about how my great-grandmother Julia delivered babies. She would know the message would go about as when a woman was pregnant. She would know when her time was due. And about a month to 2-3 weeks before that baby was due, my great-grandmother would know, and she would go to her home, and she would actually live in her home, and she would be with her preparing for that birth to happen. Other women who have given birth, or aunties, sisters, would also be there in support. The woman would be completely nurtured and taken care of. If there was, for any reason, a struggle with the pregnancy, others would be there to help with that. So when women had babies, they had people all around them looking after them when they were pregnant. In the communities, in our kin system, when babies were born, different groups in the village would raise them. There would be the parents, they'd be with the mother for a while, and then aunties, I don't know if everyone knows, but aunties and uncles also in most nations are also mothers and fathers. And in that way, no child ever went without a parent. And that, you know, when we hear the words, it takes a village to raise a child, our ancestors knew that. And that's exactly how we were taken care of. We didn't need no child protection services because that baby was surrounded with love and with family. Baby was looked after. The parents were supported. Due to contact, due to the interruption of residential schools and the 60s scoop, think of those little babies, 5 years old, being taken away. They're still babies from their parents. And all those years till some of them were 15 and 16 years old before they even had got to go home. They didn't grow up. There was nobody there to hold them when they cried, when they were sick. There was nobody there to show them that love. So we have a chance here when we indigenize the natural fact of giving life, of birthing, we bring those memories back. Did you have your hand up, Doris?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I also wanted to add, like when you talk about it takes a village to raise a child, that that whole concept. And we had that through our kinship systems
Mhm.
with the extended families, but they also had something called customary adoption.
Yes.
And that was not recognized by today's child and welfare agencies. But in Anishinaabe-Aski territory, which is Treaty 9 territory in Ontario, they now recognize customary adoption. So customary adoption was a traditional practice. Like if a mother or parents couldn't take care of their child, the aunties would step in, or a family member, the extended family would take that child and raise them as their own. And there were other practices that were related to that. So it was about 20 years ago, the Tiganagan Child Family Agency that's based in Sulikout, that services all of Anishinaabe-Aski, the communities up there, the 45 communities in that treaty area. They now recognize it's a native run Indigenous child and family service agency, and they adopted the customary adoption into their practices, which was really something, because now when children have to go into the care of somebody else, it's usually with family.
Yes. Yeah, they have family group conferencing, which came out of New Zealand in BC now. But yes, that was how it was done out here as well. Sadly, to get custom adoption recognized for a person's status, they have to have 8 people sign and then have notarized and prove that the band had cultural adoption in policy in place. It's just really onerous, eh? And but yeah, that's how we were looked after, of course, until residential school. Then it changed. You know, then it was done that other way, where it's well, the whole idea was to kill the Indian in the child and to interrupt and break our system, which they did not succeed at, because we are still here. We are here. We're all sitting here right now, and we're talking about the ways of the ancestors. We're bringing it back. We have remembered. We remember. We have that blood memory, and every time we share our stories, we share the little bits that we know, it lights up something else that is in the other person who's listening. So I will just actually close, and if there's questions, I'm happy to answer them. And it's been an honor to share what I have to share today, and it's been an honor to sit in your circle. All my relations.
Thank you, Sheila. There were a couple of questions in the chat. One is, I have been told that women are not supposed to be in a sharing circle when on their moon time because they might absorb the negative things being shared. Is this true?
I can't say if something is true or not true. I can say that is not my way. That is not my understanding. You know, our babies are inside our bodies, and just like that Tikanagan or the Cradleboard, you know, look at how well this one here I'm looking at is made. Like the baby's head is protected, all of that baby's whole body is protected. When the baby's in our womb, it's protected. It's protected by that field of energy, even that the mother has, never mind her skin and her bones. So I'm going to trust that the mother and the energy is within the womb is protected. Definitely, I think there, you know, if children are in the womb and exposed to violence and sadness, if the mother is sad, that is going to affect the child. And then, you know, and then the child is born and has life and finds its way. You know, we practice our healing practices. We smudge, we go into the water, we brush with the cedar, we brush with spruce. We have our ways to heal. We have our ways to brush it off. women on their moon do not create any harm in a circle. They do not harm eagle feathers. They do not harm the head red blanket man in a sundance. They do not harm anything. That is a colonizers, European eyes that said that. Because when they came here, they saw how strong we were, and they seen that every single one of our villages was led by women. There was women. Women were listened to. When we came out of those moon lodges, we would have messages to give to the council, to give to the hunters. They saw the power of women. So they were trying to figure out ways to break the Indians. And so one of the ways was to do to those women what they did to their own women. And so they started thinking of ways to have us push back. You know, it's like when they seen, I've heard a story where they saw the woman standing behind a man, a leader man, that he should be behind him, and they think, oh, she's being subversive or submissive. No, she wasn't. Because things were so powerful, he actually needed her strength of her energy to hold him up, because with her behind him, he was stronger. It takes two. That's why we have that balance of male and female. So I would never agree with anyone saying that a woman can harm anything or be harmed. We are protected. But also one of a very, very important teaching and lesson is to always follow the way of where you're at. And if it's not comfortable, you need to remove yourself. So that's my suggestion, all my relations.
Thank you so much, Sheila. I don't know if you can see the chat, but there's lots of comments for you and thank yous. I am going to move us forward to the next slide for Doe to share with us her stories.
Yeah, so Wache, Beitano Tenesco, Nina Chesanakasu, no Chichak, Natota, Munasipi. I'm the woman who brings the wind from the Crane clan of the Winnis River. And you know what's really interesting about that is that this morning I went for a walk with my dog, who's right beside me here, and there was a blue heron crane right in the pond this morning, and it's the first time I've ever seen it there. And so I was like, what are you doing here today? and then here I am today talking, and so the crane came to visit and said, hey, we're here today, we're going to do this. And so that's it's a very good message for me, and I really appreciate learning that, you know, like when you go out and pay attention to Mother Earth, she tells you things. And so yeah, that's pretty cool. These are some family pictures that I've asked my aunt if I could share, and also some of the pictures that my mom had of some of my cousins. We're Swampy Cree up in Northern Ontario. My mom is Swampy Cree and my dad was Irish Canadian. And I grew up in Moosonee. But my mom was from Winisk, and so that's up in Hudson Bay. And the lady in the middle over here, oh, you probably can't see my mouse, but the lady in the middle who's chopping wood has a Tikanagan on their back. Like, she's so badass. Eh? That's our family matriarch right now. She's my mom's oldest sister. Her name is Agnes Hunter. And that was her second daughter that she had in the Tikanagan. And, you know, she's probably sleeping in there, Irene, you know, because it's all covered. It has the cloth covering. But back then, you know, you still had to do what you needed to do. And so it's cold up there in Winisk. And so she still had to chop the wood. And she didn't want to put her down, so she had her on her back. Like, just imagine that. She's one tough lady. And that's the way it was. And so when my uncle Danny was born, up on the Winnis River, not in Winnis, but up on the bend over there in a place that they called Frog Creek, I think. They traveled there by dogs, but also by snowshoe. and then they were going to stay in the same area as their friends, and so they asked their friends if they could stay there. And my gukum, my grandmother, was in labor, but they had to put up the teepee. And so there's my aunt, who was 13 at the time, watching everything happen, unpacking all of the toboggans. And my gukum was in labor, putting up this teepee with my mushu, my grandfather, because it's better to have the teepee up when you're in labor than not, you know. So, you know, we didn't sit around sometimes, especially in the far north, when you're delivering in February. Like, you need to make sure that you're having shelter. And so we come from a long line of survivalists who didn't take a break during mothering and birthing. Like, so she put up the teepee with my grandfather and then settled down. And then my aunt was telling me the story, and she's like, and then I had to, you know, my 13-year-old aunt had to take care of the other children, because there were other children that were younger and in between, while, you know, they went to get the other woman to help Danny being born. But I love that story. Like, to me, it's something that before I heard it, I couldn't relate to it, because when we think of birthing, we think of, you know, going to a hospital or, you know, working with a midwife. But what we come from is that it's organic. It's like you're living your life, you're moving around on the land, because that's what we did. We trapped, we moved around, and you carried your babies on your back, or you made the teepee and then you gave birth to your babies. Like, it's just so, I'm just so proud to come from that line. And so this is, oh yeah, you can't see my mouse, but that's Agnes up in the top right corner, and that's the same baby that she's carrying on her back. So it's a beautiful design. They have the curve there. On the other side is one of my cousin Dino, and then my auntie Pauline is on the side, and that's her youngest daughter Joyce, although that is in a hospital, but she had the Tikanagan to take her home. When I had my own children, my mom was thinking about traditions and coming back to traditions, you know, going through residential schools and marrying a non-native man. She kind of let go of some of that stuff for a while, just trying to live a good life and keep her children safe, and, you know, trying to be happy. And but finding her way back to it, she wanted to try and make sure that we had that. So for my son, you can see he's in the bottom right corner. My aunt, who's carrying Irene, she made the waspasoyan. So Doris was talking about what the Ojibwe call it, the Cree up there, we just call it the waspasoyan, which is the moss bag. So that was rowan in the moss bag almost 17 years ago. And then the picture beside him is my daughter Annie in the Tikanagan, which is right here. This one right behind me. My mom didn't make it in time, like physically make it or have it made, the Tikanagan for Rowan, but she knew I wanted to have another one, another baby. So she made sure that I had a Tikanagan for Annie. And so this is Annie. That's a picture of Annie sleeping in the Tikanagan. And so she grew out of it about when she was 9.5 months because of the size. But I mean, there's different sizes that they can be made, right? But Annie also had her own waspasoyan, and my mom had made that one. So if you can stop sharing, I want to open up the Tikanagan just to show waspasoyan inside. So, and then you got to pin me somehow so that we can see. Am I in your screen? Can you see me big? Yeah, okay. So this is the Tikanagan. Obviously, this is the piece that keeps the baby safe. And Doris was saying that, you know, you can do this with one hand, And that's the ingenuity of Indigenous people. Like, they didn't have to tie with 2 strings. It's just one, and it's just a slip knot, right? So I don't know if you can see that. Come a little closer, maybe. So here it is, and you just go like that, and it's all coming undone. So easy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, getting my dog's attention. This could get interesting. So then inside, just to keep it nice and full. So this is Rowan's Waspasoyan. This is the one that he was in that photograph. And so I kind of laugh because he's, you know, almost 6'2" now, and there's no way, you know, maybe you can fit a foot in there. And then this is Annie's Waspasoyan. Now it's all falling apart there. So my mom, you know, she made it pink, which is, it's okay. Pink is nice. I learned to love pink when I had Annie. So she had put on this nice lace and this trace in there, but she also made a little bonnet to match. And so because we had been influenced by the Hudson Bay Company since 1676, when they made their first trading post up in Fort Albany and Moose Factory, we've incorporated these bonnets from Europe, like this style, into our culture. And so people make these bonnets and they put little designs on them. And so anyway, she made the bonnet to match. So so yeah, that normally stays here. I was working at the ROM for a while. I'm on leave right now, but hey, leave that alone. Sorry, puppy was getting interested. I took it to the ROM, and I would regularly show people in the ROM how to tie it up and how to take it out. And we even had some babies in there of tourists that were in there. That was a lot of fun. But I'm keeping this, right? And I'm keeping this for either Annie or Rowan to use when they have babies. Like Doris is absolutely right. These are well made. And it's not something that you would just give away, like, or just, you know, throw away. Like, it's still useful, and it is going to be part of our family tradition if they choose to have children. And if not, then we'll adopt somebody who's going to have children, and somebody in our kids' friends or whatever. It was really important to me, especially with the Waspasoyan, when my babies were first born, to put them in them. And I remember for Annie especially, because I put her in it right when I could, you know, like right after they do all that stuff. And she was wrapped in there. And then, you know, they come in and they take a whole bunch of blood from their heels and do all these tests. And so the blood technician, I don't know what they're called, she had to unwrap her, like, and so I had to help her because she didn't know how to do it. And then she was like, wow, this is really amazing, because she hadn't seen that before, right? Because I gave birth up in Markham Stouffville. And then I just explained to her who we were, where we're coming from, and then I wrapped Annie up again. But the babies are very secure in the Waspasoyan, and they are moss bags, and that's because they used to use moss as a diaper, and they would put that in there, and I had a natural antiseptic, which you know, so it didn't irritate the skin at all. And so yeah, I think it's a really good tradition that has been maintained, and for some who had lost it, it's coming back. Hey, get out of there. All right, somebody's got to come get my dog. So yeah, I have a friend, just so you know, she's on Facebook. If you look up moss bags, you can order one to be made. So if you don't have someone in your family that has been doing this or knows how to do this, that doesn't mean that you've lost complete access. Stop it. What are you eating?
Hey, Doe, you know, actually the moss bag, I think those could be one of the workshops that's in the Indigenous Cradleboard teaching toolkit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For sure we can do that. And maybe we can even get Roseanne to help us with the simple design of that, because her name is Rosie. But if you want to just look her up on Facebook, like you can order them from her, and she's gotten orders from Europe, the United States, all kinds of places, which is pretty cool. Because I think, support Indigenous people and promote our culture in any way, right? So I guess that's all I had to share today. I just wanted to show off my Tikanagan.
I want to show you my hat. I hung on to one of those little hats too. This is my my great grandson's little hat. He's got Winnie the Pooh on it, and there's the back. These hats were actually good for to keep mosquitoes off the babies.
Oh,
And so if your baby's out and it's summertime, you put this little hat on them, and it keeps mosquitoes from biting them. And they were all designed very intricate design on them, and it even has his name on his hat. And I hung on to this. Osborne, my grandson, this is his hat, and he actually was brought to me when I was diagnosed at the AIDS stage, and I was very sick in the hospital. And he was brought, my daughter came with my grandchildren, and all my grandchildren came, and Osborne was a baby. And so this hat, they gave it to me. Once he grew out of it, it was given to me. Plus I have his little moccasins too. And he's 18 now. And he came out about 2 years ago. He's two-spirited. And so these are really special to me, like his little baby wraparound moccasins and his little hat. I may give them back to him at some point, but oh. Oh, somebody wants to show us what they have.
I was going to say that would be wonderful. We were actually at the point in our session where we wanted to open it up to
Yes.
other participants to share their stories, photos, whatever you have that you want to share, and the stories that go along with them.
Aww, Carrie, he's getting so big. Oh my God.
He just woke up from a nap.
Did he? Aww. Wow.
Want to say hi? No.
The look on his face, like, Mommy, you got me in another Zoom session.
Hi,
So
Doris.
T
Yeah,
wanted to share something.
Okay, I was private chatting with Carrie because what you were all sharing just so reminded me of my new Chana's culture. I'm from the west coast of Vancouver Island, and we as well have cradleboards. They are traditionally made out of cedar bark, and instead of using moss, what we use is you take the cedar and you just really work it, and it turns into almost like a cotton. And so that's what we use for it. We're sharing some of the traditions that we still practice today. So unfortunately, when I was born and when my children were born, these were practices that we were not using. Traditional protocols we were not using at the time, given to, well, whatever. But I became a grandmother 12 years or 12 years ago, and I have 7 grandchildren. And so when my grandchildren were born, we said, we are going to practice our traditions right from birth. So we have, so what I have, and this is just a little piece of what I'll share with you. I don't know if you can see it. It is actually birch, actually a woman from a Silk woman made that for me. I recognize her as my grandmother is no longer alive, so she wasn't able to hand me something down, but the woman who made this for me, I see as a grandmother. And so inside of it, I have a little leather pouch. And inside of that leather pouch, I have 7 grandchildren. I have every single one of their belly buttons. When their belly buttons fell off, I have them all in this little container. And that symbolizes a few things. Right after the birth, I was given the placenta, and it's the traditional role amongst my Nuch'anos woman. The grandmother is provided with the placenta. It's my responsibility to go and bury it. You bury it on a full moon. And you bury it and you say prayers on it, and you bury the placenta with things that symbolize kind of what you want to be, what you want their life to be when they grow up. And the symbolism of me keeping the belly buttons. I always call it my little belly button holder, and there's lots of room for more. Those babies are forever tied to me. And one of the things that I had heard from my elders growing up was that as women, this is so complex, when you are born with the eggs that you are going to conceive children with. So in essence, as a grandmother, I held my grandbabies in my own body when I was pregnant with my child. And so I held them, and that's why I have their belly buttons. And it means that they are forever tied to me, no matter where they go in this earth. They know that they have a Nuch'anos grandmother, and they're coming home to me. Thank you for letting me share.
That's beautiful, T. Wow. It's interesting when you pulled out that basket and showed us that little basket. When we did Visioning Health in BC with the BC women, we were very close to where Sheila is from. We were at Shuswap First Nations, and the art that the women made there were baskets. And there was a teaching. It's a woman's tool, but it's not only a tool. Like the teaching we received from the elder there, the knowledge keeper, before the women started their birch bark baskets, was she connected it to our area of power. That's what that basket represents in that region there. And she gave us that teaching, and that's why when I saw the basket and those little belly buttons of your grandchildren in there, like, it's just perfect. It's just, wow. That was so moving. And that basket really brought me back to when we were in BC and the women received that teaching from the knowledge keeper there, and they made these beautiful baskets. Is there somebody else that would like to share a story or some teaching you might have received around mothering, early childhood development?
I wanted to say Clayco to T, is it? I tried to in chat, but for some reason my message went to just one person. I'm having trouble technically with that. So Clayco tea. Thank you so much. Lim Lim.
So what I forgot to mention when I shared all those pictures of the Tikanagan from my late husband's family, his mother, the first time he took me up to that remote northern fly-in community up in northwestern Ontario, he was a student at University of Toronto, and I was just a young girl that he was dating, young woman. And he took me up there for Christmas, and Indian Affairs covered my travel to go up there. Back in those days, I guess they didn't really worry about those kind of things. And while I was up there, and before we left, I met his parents that spoke no English at all. They spoke Ojibwe, and before we left, they told him, she's pregnant. We didn't even know I was pregnant. So elders also recognize, some have that insight or that sight to see when somebody's pregnant. And I ended up in that family, and my mother-in-law was the midwife of the community. And she was the one that taught me about the Takabidao swin, the Memebezewin, and the moss bag, and using the moss for my oldest. She taught me all of that. But she was also the midwife of the community, because they had no hospitals there. They had a nursing station. And if a woman couldn't make it out in time for her to have her baby, if she suddenly went into labor, she would be the one that would deliver the babies. She was also the one that people went to when they were leaving this life to transition to the next, into the spirit world. So in some cases, she brought in, she helped to bring in new life. And so in some instances, she was also the one that was there if that person passed down the road. She lived till she was like 95 years old, and she had a lot of knowledge about medicines as well. But I just remember I neglected to mention that and honor her in that way, you know, because she had that traditional knowledge of that midwife in the community. But she also was the person at the end of life that helped people transition. So she was quite a remarkable woman.
Thank you so much, Doris. We actually have another question as well. Does anyone have any knowledge surrounding the tying of leather or hide around a newborn's ankle or wrist?
I have seen hides tied around the wrist or ankles. Usually it's done for, there's a specific reason, and sometimes people will you know, if they don't have moose hide or leather, they will put a red wool, but the idea of that is for protection. So but I'm not, for me, what my knowledge of it is, it's for specific reasons. It's for specific reasons. So you know, when you're placing it, like it in my, if I was placing, if somebody I was working with or working on needed some extra protection, I might tie red twine on their wrists and on their ankles, sometimes neck and waist, depending on whatever the struggle is. I have even done it with where it was something long-term. A woman was facing, talking about her experience as a residential school survivor when she was a child at residential school. So I actually, on her ankle, beaded red beads. Like, so it was done right on her ankle. it wasn't something she could tie on. So, and it stays on like that, and you leave it until it falls off. But of course, on a baby, would be something different, I would guess. But so that's all I know about that particular ceremony, is what I'll call it. All my relations.
Mm. So while we're waiting for other questions, I just wanted to kind of interject here a little bit about um, and for maybe for us to think about, like because I've been thinking about it, and I thought about it for some time here, ever since I went to the workshop here in Montreal when Saara and Doe came here, and I suggested, and Sheila was part of that team as well, and we started having these discussions about traditional birthing practices and the tools that we use, like how can that benefit HIV positive Indigenous women that would like to have a child, because we all know that that's possible now. Yeah, and there's lots of women that have been having babies that are living with HIV, and you know, so how can we share some of these teachings, and how can they be used within a toolkit? Like I've been kind of thinking about that, because I think it would be really beneficial. And the reason why I kind of brought that up initially was when I was living at home, shortly after my diagnosis. I went home when I was diagnosed at the AIDS stage, and I lived there for 7 years to heal, and do all my healing work, begin my healing work, and turn that corner in my own life, and I was very aware of activities that were going on in the community. And I remember being invited to go speak to a young group of young mothers. They had young mothers workshops, and they invited me there one time as an HIV positive woman to share my story with them. And I remember thinking, wow, this is really, really great that they have this young mothers workshops, and these women are learning all kinds of things. I wasn't sure what they were learning. And I thought, wow, that's a beautiful idea to have young mothers workshops where they can they can learn how to make a moss bag, for example, maybe, or and get the teaching about it, and get that knowledge about moss bags, and get the Cradleboard teaching, why we use them, and to receive all those teachings. Maybe things will kind of that'll help them to walk in a good way. Not that they're not walking in a good way, but it might elevate that motherhood to another level if they have those teachings. That's what I was thinking in the back of my mind, about motherhood, young mothers, and early childhood development as well.
I think it would activate blood memory. I think that's one of the biggest things that could happen. I see a question here. Has there been a village or Indigenous community that all of the women went on their moon at the same time? So I of course I don't know from times, the time of the old ones, but I know that I've been at Sundance, and some of the Sundance women would come on their moon time, and I would hear stories then, like with contact and with the Christianization and this negativity towards this blessed time of bleeding, which is for the purpose of bringing life. there's so many ugly stories and ugly thoughts and stuff about it. Like I've heard things where, oh, somebody is out on the arbor and they're on their moon, and that's why all the women sundancers are coming on their moon time, you know, so they can't sundance, you know. But really, creation has, my explanation for that is creation has decided that that woman needs to connect with that first ceremony. She needs to connect with the power that she has at the time when she's bleeding. She needs that ceremony first. She needs to know that. She needs to learn to harness her moon time energy, her connection with Grandmother Moon. That is why she would come on her moon. Not because she's powerful, not because somebody's in the arbor and they're bleeding, so everybody else is going to bleed. I think if there's ever a village or a group of women, it is common because of the pheromones that women will come on their time at the same, you know, if you know, and it's usually like full moon or new moon. Those are the two times, and women throughout their life will cycle between those moons because Grandmother Moon is powerful at those two times. All my relations.
Mhm. If I could just add one more comment too about this development of this Cradleboard teaching knowledge tool. I think the knowledge tool can infer some on some of these, but really those knowledges should be drawn from the local community. So because a lot of the teachings are different, from nation to nation. Like I'm thinking about Inuk women, for example, and their teachings. You know, with the coats that they wear with the baby, they carry their baby in the hood of their coats, and so teachings are all different across the country, nation to nation. They're very different. So I think maybe this toolkit could infer, we could give some examples, and people can actually develop their own um, um, teachings that would lift or lift the women, the young mothers in their that they're working with, whether it's a social agency in a village somewhere, to awaken that blood memory that Sheila's talking about. Because I don't think we can do all. The knowledge tool cannot include all the teachings, but it can infer what you know, look in your own community and look for those people that can give you those share those teachings around child rearing, early childhood development from a traditional perspective, and because I imagine they're all different, but we could give some examples. Ooh, look at that, eh?
Look at what?
I was looking at T's comment.
Oh, okay. I'm having trouble seeing everything. Don't know why.
When the chat goes down, like if it's going fast, you can miss comments and questions sometimes.
Okay, that's what's happening then. Yeah.
T, could you expand on what you're suggesting there, or your discussion point there?
For sure. I'm wondering if our Promising Practices coordinator, Sarah, is part of the present, is online here. She would be the best one to refer to it. Sarah, are you on?
Yeah, hi, I'm here. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, so we CAN developed these community readiness toolkits. They were called the Promising Practices Toolkits, and they are on different topics such as sexual health, and but there are 4 toolkits developed so far on HIV, STBBIs, hepatitis C, and harm reduction. I started working at CAN last year in June, and as I started going through the toolkits and doing some updating, I noticed that there was a gap in Indigenous understandings and knowledges, Indigenous ways of seeing and understanding sexual health and wellness models within the toolkits, and then also started talking to staff about the toolkits as well. And in one of the meetings, someone named Andrea, who used to work at CAN in research, talked about a teaching that she had, or a suggestion that she had heard from someone named Sandy Lambert about basically saying that we should be calling our toolkits knowledge bundles, because that's what they are, and we should be collecting this knowledge from across the land, and they should not just represent Western medical understandings. They should also, they should mainly focus on Indigenous ways of knowing and doing and understanding and seeing. And I think what happens sometimes is that it's mostly, Western medical understandings that are represented, and then maybe like a tiny bit of a quote or something from an Indigenous perspective. And so I think one thing that is going to be an ongoing project for me is transitioning our toolkits and adapting them, and trying to ongoingly change them over into knowledge bundles. And yeah, so I guess I don't know if that is helpful. But
Really helpful, Sarah. It's really helpful.
Yeah,
And
it's really
actually, Ken and Renee was actually involved in supporting this work right from the very, very beginning. So it's like a natural connection. So it would be awesome to bring you in and have a chat with us.
Yeah, I would love that. And just listening to all of your amazing knowledge and experience and understandings has been so helpful for me, and it's also beautiful. So thank you. Thank you for sharing, everybody. And also I can see how some of the things that you're sharing could be integrated into our knowledge bundles as well. So so that would be great. Thank you.
I also just
Thank you, Sarah.
I know the knowledge bundles. There's a couple things that I also wanted to contribute to that, and just in that recognition that across this land, having a knowledge bundle is very familiar culturally to us as Indigenous people. And what's in my knowledge bundle might not be in your knowledge bundle, right? So you can choose what's going to go. And what was in my knowledge bundle 20 years ago isn't in it today. So it's a living thing. It demonstrates that is not knowledge is lifelong. Yeah. And I do really quickly want to just kind of plug in of that. We are working with HIV Legal Network right now, and we'll see what type of project, like what that partnership comes out with. But one of the things that we are looking at, and it's just in reference to the very beginning of your presentation, you talked about understanding your legal rights as women. And so we are working, have a project planned with the Legal Network to to ensure that understanding your human rights, or your rights as a woman, that those are included in your bundle if they meet, if those pertain to you, right? So we are doing some work with regards to that, about understanding specifically legal rights for women. And yes, what a beautiful, your presentation today has just really moved me. And I really appreciate, the work that all of you have done and what you're sharing with us today. The power of Indigenous women.
Hey, Saara,
Yeah,
there's another one more
Yeah, I was going to say, I just
question.
want to, I know that Donnie's been waiting patiently here to have a question answered, which is, do men assist in women at all with the toolkit, with the toolkit or the Cradleboard, the Cradleboard story kit, whatever we're going to call it, knowledge bundle of some sort. I'm going to defer that.
I think that whole kinship kind of concept, the whole kinship discussion that Sheila raised, and it was also in the presentation, and Doe touched on it. It takes a village. I think there are roles for men too, and we had these discussions before in other circles when we were doing women's work. Some of the women said, "What about the men?" You know, men have roles in our lives as well, and so I'd like to hear from Donnie. And I would, and there are two-spirit men that are also aunties to children within our movement. I remember one of the women I know, I won't say, HIV positive woman that took her child to a mainstream conference, and she said, I was so offended the gay men were going, oh, a baby's here. Like they were annoyed that there was a baby that was brought to the conference. And that wouldn't happen in our community. At our conferences, babies come, right? And there's a lot of aunties, like Donnie, you're an auntie.
I'm a great auntie.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the thing about the men, because I really feel personally anyways, I was in the delivery room with my sister, and it was such an honor just to help her. It wasn't that I was looking at her parts, but what I was looking at was life was coming, and how that life came, and how I contribute. One was just being present there with her, because she had no one else. And now me and my great niece we're almost like, if I don't get some of my great niece, they talk to her or see her, because she's still young. She's what, 7 months old? And it's like I need to get a fix from her, because I watched and I helped bring her here. And if I don't get that fix, I'm a real bee around here, because nobody likes me. And but I think men should play. Stop it. I really believe that men can play a really powerful part once we know what our role is as a man within our community, and how we can help our women. And I really believe, like what Doe was saying, it takes a family to raise a family. And again, it's bringing it back to where it used to be, is where everybody supported it.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. But I really believe that men should be part of it. Yeah, if they can help in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And with the moon time teachings, women, when they're on their moon, are asked to not cook, not because they're going to taint the food, because that's one of the stories out there. Oh, you don't let them near the food because they're going to make the meat go rotten. That all came from Christianity and Christianization and those European ideas to get women pushed down. The men would help women, like if what you could do is help her cook and clean while she's on her moon time, so that she can gather all of that power that's coming from grandmother moon, and it benefits the family, it benefits the whole community. We also We also create moontime bundles so that women, even though we cannot go to a lodge these days, we can make a lodge in our private spaces. We can have a little bundle to bring out when we're on our moon and use as much time as possible to honor that time, to get that connection opened up between Grandmother Moon and ourselves here in our life giver bodies. The idea of the bundle is just to help us hold intention. It's about ritual, and ritual, that's what ritual does, is it helps us to maintain intention. So definitely men are incredibly valuable. We cannot have one without the other. There needs to be a balance, and the men support the women by doing what is asked. It's always supporting, not basically telling us what we need to do or how we need to do it. All my relations.
I just want to add some thoughts onto that too very quickly. I know we're running out of time. As two spirit women who, we don't have a father for our children because we're two women who are both parents, yet our children have very important men in their lives who are their uncles, who are their foster uncles. Not really foster uncles, but well, uncles who aren't blood uncles, but they're still uncles, that play very important roles in our children's lives, and have been and continue to be. And we recognize that, and we encourage that, and we make sure that happens. And so I think in terms of, when we're talking about family, and it's not always what the definition is in the dictionary. That's a Western way of thinking. It's just about having different role models in your life. And that includes siblings and older siblings, younger siblings, and then extended family, and then chosen family. And sometimes our peers become our chosen family, and they become stronger bonds. And so absolutely, men have a role, and Two Spirit have a role, and everybody definitely has a role. And I think children need that.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Doe. I think that's a really perfect point to sort of wrap things up. I'm just aware of the time, and this is such a rich discussion with so much incredible sharing, knowledge sharing. This project, we've been doing this for many years, and we are not wrapping it up because this keeps happening. So stay tuned, because we are trying to move forward, and this is actually has all of our minds thinking about what we need to do next in terms of connecting back with folks, many of who participated today. I hope we can come and connect with you. But I want to hand it over to Doris, who is going to be now facilitating a draw for a beautiful portrait. And I'll hand it over to you, Doris, to facilitate this.
Okay. One of you is going to be the lucky owner of this painting. And it came from Thunder Bay. I got it when I was up there, like I said, at an HIV/AIDS conference in a regional conference. And I've been wanting to give it to this to people who come to these sessions to have these discussions. So how we're going to do the draw? I want you to pick a number between 1 to 50. And you might not land on the exact number. I've already picked a number. I'm not showing you the number, but I can see it. And so if you could pick a number from 1 to 50, and you'll see that, I think we should all see the numbers too. That way, if people pick the same number, I might tell them, you pick the same number of somebody else, can you pick another one? So send your numbers here, and then if somebody picks the right number or the closest one to it as well, you can win this.
I'm looking at all the numbers.
Okay.
Doris, this is Valerie. My cursor has disappeared and I can't enter my number, but I would like to put down 34 if it's not there.
I've written it down.
Thank you.
Saara, are you writing all the numbers down?
Well, they're all in the chat, but I wrote down Val's because.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Saara, I'm going to send you privately. I'm
Okay.
going to send you the number I've selected so you can announce the winner.
Okay.
And I'll actually show it to you once the winner has been announced.
Hello.
Did
Okay.
you get it?
I see it.
Okay.
Just give me a second. I have to look through everyone now. Okay.
I see one very close.
I see one close.
Right next to it.
Yep. I think we have. Has everybody done it? Okay, I think we are done. And the winner is, do you want to say it?
Yay! Oh, wow.
I picked 17.
That's my number.
Is that what you sent, Donnie?
No.
No.
I think that the closest person is Dorothy, who picked six. We don't have a 17, but we have a 16, correct?
Yeah.
Who's number 16?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Old Dorothy.
Dorothy.
Hi.
It says, hey, where's Dorothy? Can we see you? Hey, Dorothy.
Thank you.
You are the winner of this photo. If you could send your address to Ken, to who can the address go to?
How about to Carrie Martin? Would that make sense?
Okay, Carrie Martin.
Or if you want, Terry, if you don't want to show your home address, we can use the office here. It's Renee.
No, the email address.
Email, perfect. Yep.
So Dorothy, if you could send your home address to Carrie Martin. Carrie, can you put your email in here in the chat? And Dorothy, I will send you the photo.
Thank you so much, Doris.
The
Thank
artwork.
you.
It's not framed or anything.
No, no problem. Thank you so much.
Doris, is it easier if she just emails you her address? Because I don't have the painting.
Okay. So, okay, Dorothy, I'm going to send you my email address.
Okay.
And it's in the chat, just to you directly.
Oh,
you can email me your address and I'll drop this in the mail tomorrow. All right.
fantastic. That was a wonderful session.
So that was phenomenal.
I just wanted to, before we end, I wanted to give a shout out to Val, who's with us today, because Val actually helped to support and lead the sessions and the consultation in Vancouver. So thanks, Val.
Yay, Val.
So do we should do a quick closing, Saara, Doris, Doe?
Yes.
Sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
It's been an honor to lead this with three of you. Lim Lim. Going to invite everybody to take that deep breath in through your nose, right into your diaphragm, out through your mouth. Breathe in again through your nose, right through your legs, through your feet, into the earth, and out with your mouth. One more time as you breathe in. Say thank you, Lim Lim, Kolchutin, ancestors, for being here, for holding us today. We release you. We thank you for being here. Walk with each of us as we go our different ways. Help each of us to keep our minds and our hearts connected. Help each of us to remember that we've been in a big circle today across this Turtle Island. We are connected. not just with our hearts, but also with our minds and with our intentions of wellness and well-being for our people, for all people. Help us to eradicate this pandemic that we're in so that we can move our lives and our ways into another direction. Help each one of us to stay strong, stay well, all my relations.
Oh, miigwech.
Well,
Thank you, everybody.